Dr. Rebecca Morgan had spent 15 years studying Victorian and Edwardian childhood photography, but she'd never seen anything quite like this. The photograph lay on the examination table in the Stanford University archives, illuminated by careful archival lighting. It was a formal portrait of twin girls, approximately 5 years old, taken in a professional studio. Both wore identical white dresses with ribbon sashes, their dark hair styled in matching braids. They sat side by side on an ornate wooden bench, the plain backdrop typical of early 20th century portrait photography. One twin looked exactly as Rebecca would expect. A slight smile, eyes focused on the camera, the careful composure of a child instructed to sit still, a normal portrait from 1906. But the other twin's expression stopped Rebecca cold. The girl's face held profound sorrow. Not temporary sadness, but something deeper, more adult. Her eyes, while directed toward the camera, seemed to look through it, focused on something distant and terrible. Most unsettling was the juxtaposition. Her twin smiled gently beside her while this child appeared to be experiencing something entirely different. Rebecca was 43, methodical in her research, skeptical of dramatic interpretations. But this photograph defied easy explanation. Children in twin portraits from this era were posed to mirror each other, matching expressions, matching poses. Photographers worked hard to achieve this effect. Yet here was a portrait where one twin smiled appropriately while the other looked devastated. And no one had stopped the session. The photograph had arrived at Stanford 2 weeks earlier, as part of a donation from the estate of California. Historian Dorothy Chen. Rebecca had been hired to catalog the materials. She turned the photograph over. A label on the back, written in faded ink, Eleanor and Charlotte Hayes, San Francisco, March 1906, March 1906. 2 months before the great San Francisco earthquake, Rebecca spent the morning searching through San Francisco photographer records from 1906, the city's destruction. In April had eliminated many business archives, but some materials survived, including partial records from Hayes and Sullivan Photography Studio on Market Street. The studio had been prominent, serving San Francisco's middle and upper classes. Robert Hayes and Patrick Sullivan operated the business from 1898 until the earthquake destroyed their building. In the California Historical Society archives, Rebecca found a surviving appointment ledger from Hayes and Sullivan. The entry for March 14, 1906 listed Hayes family. Twin portrait, urgent request. 8 euros, $8 was double the usual rate. The notation urgent request was unusual. Most family portraits were scheduled weeks in advance. But what caught Rebecca's attention was the surname. The twins were Eleanor and Charlotte Hayes, photographed at Hayes and Sullivan Studio. One of the photographers shared their last name. She searched through business records and found the connection. Robert Hayes had a brother named Thomas who worked as an accountant in San Francisco. Thomas had married Anna Chen in 1899, and they'd had twin daughters in 1901. Eleanor and Charlotte weren't just subjects. They were the photographer's nieces. Rebecca found more information in Dorothy Chen's donation records. Dorothy had been born Dorothy Hayes, daughter of Charlotte, one of the twins in the photograph. Dorothy had spent her life knowing about this portrait, keeping it marked as important, unresolved. Rebecca called Dorothy's executor, James Peterson. Did Dorothy ever mention the twin portrait? Rebecca asked. James was quiet for a moment. She said her mother never wanted to discuss it, that there was something about that photograph her mother couldn't bear to explain. Dorothy spent years trying to understand. What about the other twin, Eleanor? She died in the earthquake, James said quietly. April 18, 1906, just 5 weeks after this photograph was taken. Rebecca requested access to Dorothy Chen's personal papers. The university archivist brought her 3 boxes of materials, letters, diaries, photographs, and newspaper clippings spanning Dorothy's 91 years. Rebecca focused on the oldest materials. In a folder marked Mother's Things, she found letters written by Anna Hayes, the twins' mother, to her sister in Los Angeles during 1906. The first letter was dated March 20th, 1906, 6 days after the photograph. Dear May, I don't know what to do about Eleanor. Since last week, she has been inconsolable. She cries in her sleep, clings to me during the day, and says terrible things are coming. Charlotte tries to comfort her, but Eleanor won't be consoled. She draws pictures of buildings falling and fire in the sky. Thomas thinks she's having nightmares, but this feels different. More persistent. Yesterday she told me the ground was going to shake and that she wouldn't be able to find me when it happened. Dr. Morrison found nothing physically wrong. He suggested anxiety or bad dreams, but Eleanor insists these aren't dreams. She says she knows what's coming. Thomas arranged for Robert to photograph the girls, hoping it might distract Eleanor. But even during the session, she couldn't smile. I'm frightened, May. The second letter was dated April 10, 1906. Eleanor's nightmares have gotten worse. Last night she woke screaming that the shaking was almost here, that it would happen soon. She begged me to take her and Charlotte away from the city. Thomas is losing patience. He says we can't uproot our lives because a 5-year-old is having bad dreams. Charlotte is starting to be affected too. She cries when Eleanor cries, though she doesn't understand why. There was no third letter. The next document was a telegram dated April 20th, 1906. Anna, thank God you and Charlotte survived. Devastated about Eleanor. Will come soon. Love, May. Rebecca found more materials in Dorothy's papers, including a handwritten account written by Anna Hayes in 1908, 2 years after the earthquake. I wake some nights still hearing Eleanor's voice from that morning. Mama, it's happening. The shaking is here. She was standing beside my bed, fully dressed, though it was just after 5 in the morning. I was annoyed. Why was she awake so early? I told her to go back to bed. Then the room began to move. The earthquake lasted less than a minute, but it felt like hours. The house shook violently, plaster falling, furniture sliding. I grabbed Charlotte and tried to reach Eleanor, but the shaking was too severe. I lost my footing and fell. When the shaking stopped, part of the ceiling had collapsed in the girls' room. Thomas pulled away the debris and found Eleanor underneath. She was still alive, conscious, looking at me with those same sad eyes. I tried to tell you, Mama, she whispered. I could see it coming. She died in my arms 20 minutes later. Charlotte sat beside us, holding her sister's hand, not crying, just watching. Thomas carried Eleanor's body out. The city was burning around us. Everything Eleanor had described in her nightmares, everything she'd drawn, we made it to Oakland. Charlotte didn't speak for a month. When she finally did, she asked only one question. Why could Eleanor see it when I couldn't? Robert, Thomas's brother who took the photograph, died in the fires 3 days after the earthquake. His studio burned with him. All his photographs were destroyed, except the portrait of my girls. I look at that photograph sometimes, though it breaks my heart. Eleanor's face holds everything she knew, everything she tried to tell us. And Charlotte, smiling beside her, not yet aware that within 5 weeks she would be the only one left. Rebecca needed to understand if there was any scientific basis for what Eleanor had experienced. Could a child actually sense an approaching earthquake weeks in advance? She contacted Dr. Sarah Liu, a geophysicist at UC Berkeley, who specialized in earthquake prediction and seismic precursor phenomena. They met at a cafe near campus, and Rebecca explained Eleanor's case while showing Dr. Liu the photograph and Anna's account. Dr. Liu studied the materials carefully. There's a long history of anecdotal reports about unusual animal behavior before earthquakes. The scientific community has been skeptical, but recent research suggests there may be mechanisms by which some organisms can detect precursor phenomena. What kind of mechanisms? In the days and weeks before a major earthquake, there are measurable changes in the environment. Radon gas release from underground rock fractures, variations in electromagnetic fields as stress accumulates in fault zones, changes in groundwater chemistry, slight ground deformations. Most humans can't consciously detect these changes, but some people might be more sensitive. Dr. Liu pulled up research papers. There are documented cases of people experiencing unusual sensations before earthquakes, headaches, anxiety, disturbed sleep, usually dismissed as coincidence. But a small percentage of people seem to have genuine sensitivity to pre-seismic environmental changes. Could a 5-year-old child have this sensitivity? Children's brains are more plastic, more receptive to sensory input than adult brains. If Eleanor had heightened sensitivity to electromagnetic field variations or other seismic precursors, she might have been experiencing these changes consciously, as dread or certainty that something bad was approaching. Dr. Liu looked at the photograph again. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake was magnitude 7.9. Massive stress had been accumulating along the San Andreas Fault for decades. In the weeks before the rupture, there would have been measurable precursor signals. If this child could detect those changes, she would have been experiencing increasing anxiety. Rebecca couldn't answer why Eleanor perceived the approaching earthquake while her identical twin Charlotte hadn't. If the sensitivity was neurological, shouldn't both twins have experienced it? She contacted Dr. Michael Foster, a developmental psychologist at Stanford who specialized in twin studies. She explained the case and asked whether identical twins could have significantly different sensory perceptions. Dr. Foster invited her to his office. Identical twins share the same DNA, but they're not neurologically identical. Environmental factors, subtle differences in prenatal development, and early life experiences can create variations in neural wiring and sensory processing. He pulled up brain scan studies. We've documented cases where one identical twin has heightened auditory processing while the other doesn't, or where one twin experiences synesthesia while the other doesn't. The genetic potential might be the same, but expression can differ. So Eleanor could have developed heightened sensitivity to environmental changes that Charlotte didn't have. Absolutely. Twin studies are valuable precisely because they let us isolate environmental and developmental factors from genetic ones. If only one twin develops a particular sensitivity, we know it's not purely genetic. Dr. Foster looked at the photograph. There's another phenomenon worth considering: twin emotional connection. Many twins report feeling each other's emotions strongly. If Eleanor was experiencing intense anxiety about the approaching earthquake, Charlotte might have been affected by her twin's emotional state, even if she couldn't perceive the seismic precursors directly. Rebecca thought about Anna's letters. Charlotte had started crying when Eleanor cried, even though she didn't understand why Eleanor was frightened. The mother wrote that Charlotte began to be affected by Eleanor's terror, Rebecca said. That's consistent with twin emotional bonds. Charlotte might not have had the same seismic sensitivity, but she was connected enough to Eleanor to feel that something was profoundly wrong. She just couldn't identify what it was. Dr. Foster studied the twins' expressions. In this portrait, we're seeing the difference captured perfectly. Eleanor, who could sense the approaching disaster, wearing her knowledge on her face, and Charlotte, trying to maintain a normal smile. Rebecca wanted to understand why Robert Hayes had taken this portrait despite Eleanor's obvious distress. Why hadn't he stopped the session or tried to coax a smile from the grieving child? She searched through surviving correspondence from Robert Hayes and found letters he'd written to colleagues. One letter, dated March 16, 1906, 2 days after photographing his nieces, was addressed to another San Francisco photographer. I did something unusual yesterday. My brother asked me to photograph his twin daughters, an urgent request because Eleanor has been experiencing severe distress. When the family arrived, Charlotte was cheerful, but Eleanor was nearly catatonic with sadness. She would not smile. She would not engage. She simply stared at the camera with an expression I've never seen on a child's face. Profound grief, as if she were in mourning. I should have rescheduled. But something made me take the photograph exactly as the children appeared. Eleanor's expression was so powerful, so genuine, that it seemed important to document it. I can't explain why I felt compelled to capture this obvious disparity between the twins. Perhaps because Eleanor's emotion was so raw and real. I've looked at the developed print several times. It's disturbing. The two girls, identical in every physical way, expressing completely different emotional states. Charlotte present in the moment, Eleanor somewhere else entirely. In some future she could see, and we couldn't. My brother is unhappy with the portrait. He wanted matching smiles. But I think this photograph is the most honest portrait I've ever taken. Whatever Eleanor is feeling, it's captured here truthfully. I've made 2 prints, one for the family, one for my records. I suspect my brother will destroy his copy, but mine will remain. Rebecca understood now. Robert Hayes had recognized a moment of profound truth and chose to document it rather than manufacture false happiness. That decision had preserved Eleanor's knowledge for history. Without this photograph, Eleanor would have been just another earthquake victim. But Robert had captured proof that one child had known. Rebecca wanted to know how Charlotte had lived with the knowledge of her sister's death and the guilt of surviving. She searched through Dorothy's papers and found materials about Charlotte's adult life. Charlotte had married David Chen in 1921 and had one daughter, Dorothy, born in 1933. She'd lived quietly, working as a librarian in Oakland, never returning to San Francisco to live. She died in 1998 at 92. Dorothy had written notes about her mother's life. Mother rarely spoke about her childhood or her twin sister. The few times I asked about Eleanor, Mother would become quiet and withdrawn. Once, when I was 16, I pressed her about the photograph. She finally told me some of the story. Eleanor knew, Mother said. For weeks before the earthquake, she knew something terrible was coming. She tried to tell everyone, but we thought she was having nightmares. I was her twin. I should have understood, should have felt what she felt. But I didn't. I smiled for that photograph while Eleanor mourned what was coming. 5 weeks later, Eleanor died in my arms while the house collapsed around us. I survived because I was in the hallway. If I had believed her, if I had insisted we leave the city, she might still be alive. I carry that every day. Mother refused to look at the photograph after that conversation. She kept it but stored it away. She said she couldn't bear to see Eleanor's face, to see the knowledge and warning that no one had heeded. Rebecca found another passage. When Mother was dying in 1998, she kept calling for Eleanor. She would reach out her hand as if Eleanor were in the room. Once I heard her say, "I know, Ellie, I know you tried to tell us. I understand now. I'm sorry it took so long." In her final hour, Mother became very peaceful. She looked at me and said, "Eleanor says the shaking won't hurt this time. She says she'll be with me." Then she closed her eyes and died. Rebecca expanded her research, wondering if other children had displayed similar sensitivity before the 1906 earthquake. She searched through newspaper archives from San Francisco in early 1906. She found scattered references. March 2, 1906. Several Mission District families report children experiencing nightmares and refusing to sleep in their homes. Parents attribute the disturbances to a recent influenza outbreak. March 10, 1906. Teachers at Harrison Street School note unusual anxiety among students, with many children expressing fear of buildings falling. School psychologists suggest the fears may stem from recent minor tremors. March 15, 1906. City Hospital reports an increase in children presenting with sleep disturbances and unexplained fears. Dr. Williams states that nervous disorders appear to be affecting young people in unprecedented numbers this month. These brief mentions painted a larger picture. Eleanor Hayes hadn't been the only child sensing the approaching earthquake. There had been others, children throughout San Francisco experiencing the same precursor signals, the same sense of impending disaster, but they'd been children. Their warnings had been interpreted as nightmares, anxiety, nervous disorders, anything except accurate perception of real environmental changes. Rebecca found one more article that made her stop. A memorial list published May 3, 1906, listing children who had died in the earthquake. Among hundreds of names, Eleanor Hayes, age 5, died April 18th in home collapse. Twin sister Charlotte survived. According to family, Eleanor had been experiencing premonitions of disaster for several weeks prior to the earthquake. She reportedly told her mother, "I tried to tell you the shaking was coming." Someone had listened. Some journalist had recorded Eleanor's warning, had documented that this child had known. The brief mention had been buried in a long list of casualties, easily overlooked. But it was there. Proof that Eleanor's family had acknowledged their daughter had tried to warn them. Rebecca wondered how many other children had died still trying to tell adults what they knew. 8 months later, Rebecca stood in the Stanford University Museum, watching visitors examine the exhibition she'd curated, Unheard Warnings, Child Perception and the 1906 San Francisco Earthquake. The centerpiece was the portrait of Eleanor and Charlotte Hayes, Eleanor with her expression of profound grief, Charlotte with her gentle smile, captured 5 weeks before the earthquake that would kill one twin and haunt the other for 92 years. Rebecca had worked with geophysicists, psychologists, historians, and seismologists to create an exhibition that honored Eleanor and the other children who had tried to warn their families. Display panels explained seismic precursor phenomena, environmental sensitivity, and how some individuals can perceive changes that most people cannot consciously detect. The exhibition included Anna Hayes's letters and written account, making Eleanor's story personal and immediate. It showed newspaper articles, documenting other children's unusual behavior in March 1906. It presented current research on earthquake prediction, but the heart of the exhibition remained that photograph, visual proof that one child had felt what was coming. Rebecca had written the main exhibition text. Eleanor Hayes died at age 5 on April 18, 1906, when the Great San Francisco earthquake caused her family's home to collapse. In the weeks before her death, she had repeatedly told her family that terrible things were coming, that the ground was going to shake. Her warnings were interpreted as nightmares. No one believed a 5-year-old child could possess accurate knowledge of an approaching disaster. This photograph, taken by her uncle Robert Hayes on March 14, 1906, captures Eleanor's knowledge and grief. While her twin sister Charlotte smiles appropriately for the camera, Eleanor's expression shows the weight of knowing what was coming and the helplessness of not being believed. Eleanor was not alone. Newspaper reports from March 1906 document numerous children throughout San Francisco experiencing nightmares, anxiety, and fears of buildings falling. Modern research suggests these children may have been detecting real environmental changes that preceded the earthquake. Their warnings were dismissed because we didn't understand that children might perceive what adults couldn't. On opening day, an elderly man approached Rebecca. "I'm James Hayes," he said, "Eleanor and Charlotte's grandnephew. Thank you for telling this story." He handed Rebecca an envelope. This was in Dorothy's papers. Inside was a letter written by Charlotte Chen in 1996. To whoever finds this photograph, Eleanor could see what was coming. She tried to tell us, but we didn't believe her. She was 5 years old, and we thought she was having bad dreams. When the earthquake came, she died knowing she'd been right. I've lived with that for 90 years. I was her twin. We shared everything, but I couldn't share her gift, couldn't feel what she felt. She died trying to save us. If you're looking at this photograph and wondering why one twin looks devastated while the other smiles, now you know. Eleanor knew the earthquake was 5 weeks away. She could feel it approaching, and she couldn't make anyone understand, listen to children, even when what they're saying seems impossible. Eleanor was right and we were wrong. I'm 92 now. Soon I'll see Eleanor again. I hope she'll forgive me for not understanding what she tried to tell me. Look at her face in that photograph. That's not a child having nightmares. That's a child who knows the truth and can't make anyone listen. Believe the children before it's too late. Charlotte Hayes Chen, October 1996. Rebecca displayed the letter next to the photograph. Together, they told the complete story. The child who knew, the twin who survived, and the photographer who preserved the truth. Visitors came daily, drawn by the haunting image of two identical girls expressing completely different emotions. Parents brought children and talked about the importance of listening. Scientists discussed seismic sensitivity. Psychologists explored childhood perception. But everyone who saw the photograph felt the same thing. The profound sadness of a child who saw disaster approaching and couldn't make anyone believe her. Eleanor Hayes stared out from that 1906 portrait, her expression no longer puzzling but heartbreaking. A 5-year-old girl carrying knowledge no child should bear, trying to warn her family, mourning what she knew was coming. And beside her, Charlotte smiled, the twin who would survive, who would carry guilt for 92 years, who would die still wishing she could have felt what her sister felt. The photograph remained as Robert Hayes had captured it, honest, disturbing, and profoundly true. One child's expression matching the moment. The other child's expression matching a moment 5 weeks in the future, when the ground would shake and a 5-year-old girl's warnings would finally be proven right, but far too late.